"You don't belong to this family anymore. Get out of here." Melissa screamed this at me while I was sitting at her table after showing up on time, with bags of groceries after cooking for 3 hours for her entire family. But I didn't get up. I didn't cry. I just stared at her and thought, remember this day, my daughter. Today, you didn't just lose your mother. Today, you destroyed your own future. While she kept screaming at me with that face red with rage, I've known since she was a little girl, my mind was already working, already calculating, already deciding. Because at 70 years old, you learn that words can hurt, but actions hurt more. And I was already very clear about what my actions would be. I had arrived at Melissa's house at 11:30 in the morning like every Sunday for the last 2 years. I rang the doorbell carrying 2 heavy bags with fresh ingredients I had bought at the market early. Chris opened the door without even greeting me. He just stepped aside to let me pass. Melissa was on the sofa with her phone, and she didn't even look up when I came in. My sweet granddaughter Marina was the only one who ran to hug me as if I were the most important person in the world. At least to her I still was. "Grandma Aurora, did you bring me something yummy?" she asked, with that smile that always melted my heart. I told her I had brought everything to make her favorite meal, and her little eyes lit up. I went straight to the kitchen and started preparing lunch as always. I took the meat out of the bags, chopped the vegetables, put the rice on to boil. This was the routine every Sunday. I would arrive, I would cook, I would serve, and they would eat what I prepared with my money and my labor. But that Sunday was going to be different, although I didn't know it yet. Melissa only appeared in the kitchen to complain that I had bought yellow bell peppers instead of red ones. "Mom, I've told you 1,000 times Marina doesn't eat yellow peppers. Why do you never listen to me?" I explained that the red ones were extremely expensive, $30 a pound, but she just huffed and went back to her sofa, to her phone, to her world, where I only existed when she needed something. Chris came over while I was stirring the sauce and started on his favorite topic. "Your house. Aurora, I was thinking it would be a good idea for you to sell that big house. You're too old to live alone, and we could help you invest the money." He always spoke with that fake smile, as if he were doing me a huge favor by wanting to get his hands on my property. I kept cooking without answering. I had heard this conversation hundreds of times. They planned my life, my money, my future, as if I were a child incapable of making decisions. But I heard everything. I registered everything. I stored every word, every dismissive gesture, every display of greed in my memory. Marina stayed with me in the kitchen, telling me about her new teacher, about the science project she had to do, about everything that was truly important in her small world. She was the only one who saw me as a person, not as a walking ATM. I gave her a small piece of meat to taste, and she hugged me tightly. "Grandma, you cook better than Mom," she whispered in my ear, and I smiled despite everything. When I finished cooking, I set the table in Melissa's dining room. She was still glued to her phone, Chris was watching television, and I was still the invisible maid who appeared every Sunday to serve them. I served the plates called "Everyone to Eat" and sat in the chair that was always mine, the most uncomfortable one, the one with its back to the window. It was during the meal that Chris brought up the topic of the will, without tact, without respect, as if he were asking me to pass the salt. "Aurora, my cousin, works with a very good lawyer. Could we make an appointment this week to review the will? It's better to have everything organized, don't you think?" Melissa put down her fork and looked at me with those calculating eyes that gave me chills. "Yes, Mom, it's the smartest thing to do. That way we avoid future problems." Future problems. They talked about my death as if it were something they were eagerly awaiting, as if they were already counting the days. I told them I already had a lawyer, that my papers were in order, but that just annoyed them more. They didn't want me to have control over anything. They wanted me to depend completely on them to hand over everything without questions. Chris insisted with arguments about taxes and inheritance, and Melissa tensed up when I refused to give them details. The tension grew when Marina accidentally spilled a little orange juice on the tablecloth. It was a tiny thing, something kids do, but Melissa exploded as if the world were ending. She yelled at the little girl with a cruelty that broke my soul, and when I defended my granddaughter when I said it wasn't a big deal, Melissa directed all her fury at me. You always defend her. You always contradict me in front of my daughter. It seems like you only come here to cause me problems." Her screams filled the whole house. Marina started to cry, and Chris kept eating as if nothing was happening, like the coward he had always been. I stood up to comfort Marina, but Melissa stopped me. "Don't touch her. Don't spoil her anymore. I'm sick of your opinions and of you coming here to bother me." Bother her. Coming to cook for them with my own money was bothering her. And then the moment came that would change everything. Melissa stood up, pointed her finger at me as if I were a criminal, and yelled those words I will never forget. "You don't belong to this family anymore. Get out of here." The silence that followed was deafening. Marina was crying silently. Chris kept chewing as if nothing had happened, and I just sat there processing what had just happened. The daughter I had raised with so much love, whom I had educated, whom I had supported through every difficult moment of her life, was kicking me out of her house like trash. But instead of breaking, something inside me hardened. Something that had been dormant for too long woke up with a force that surprised me. I got up slowly, very slowly, picked up my purse, and walked to the door without saying a word. Melissa kept screaming behind me, but I wasn't listening anymore. In my mind, I was already dialing phone numbers, already making appointments, already making the most important decisions of my life. Before opening the door, I turned and looked her directly in the eyes. "Melissa," I said with a calmness that surprised even me, "remember this date. Today, you didn't just lose your mother. Today, you destroyed your own future." I left that house, closing the door gently, as if I were closing a chapter of my life forever. As I walked to my car, I took out my phone and dialed the number of Rose, my best friend. "Rose," I said when she answered, "I need you to come with me to the bank tomorrow. And then to the lawyer. It's time to make some very important changes." The next day, I woke up at 6 in the morning, as always. Not because I had to, but because at 70, the body has its own schedule. I made myself a strong coffee, opened the curtains in my bedroom, and looked at my reflection in the vanity mirror. "Aurora Perez," I said to myself, "it's time you remember who you really are." My house was silent, but it wasn't the sad silence of loneliness. It was the silence of peace, of being able to have breakfast without anyone telling me how to spend my money or what to do with my life. I turned on the TV to watch the news while I ate, and then I checked my phone. I had several messages in the WhatsApp group with my friends from the walking club. Rose had written, "Good morning, beauties. Who's up for a walk in the park today?" Mary replied with a fire emoji. "I'm in. I need to burn off yesterday's quesadillas." Anne sent a picture of her healthy breakfast with the message, "Ready to conquer the world, ladies." I wrote in the group, "See you at 8. I have important news to share." Rose immediately sent me a private message. "Is everything okay, friend? You sounded worried yesterday." I replied, "Everything's perfect, better than ever." I got dressed in my favorite tracksuit, the pink one with white stripes I had bought last month, my new sneakers that were still perfect, and the cap Marina gave me for my birthday. I took a selfie in the mirror and uploaded it to my Facebook with the message, "Ready for a new day full of blessings." I drove to the Central Park where we met every morning. My 2018 sedan was still running perfectly, and I was still driving without any problems, despite what Melissa always said about old people behind the wheel. I arrived on time as always, and Rose, Mary, and Anne were already there waiting for me with their water bottles and their good morning smiles. "What happened yesterday?" Rose asked as we started walking along the path. "You sounded very serious on the phone." The four of us walked at a good pace, as we had for the last 3 years when we decided that old age wasn't going to beat us without a fight. I told them everything that had happened at Melissa's house, every shout, every snub, every hurtful word. My friends listened in silence, shaking their heads in indignation. When I finished, Mary was the first to speak. "Aurora, that girl needs a lesson she will never forget. Kids these days think parents owe them everything," Anne added, "but they don't think they owe us anything." Rose walked beside me, squeezing my arm. "Oh, what are you going to do, friend?" "I'm going to teach her that her mother is no fool," I told them. "Today we're going to the bank and then to the lawyer. It's time for Melissa to learn that actions have consequences." We finished our 1-hour walk and sat on our usual bench to do our stretching exercises. I loved that part of my routine, feeling strong, feeling capable, feeling alive. After saying goodbye to the girls, I stopped by Mrs. Carmen's beauty salon. I needed a touch-up on my hair color and a manicure. Carmen has known me for 15 years and always makes me feel like new. "You look radiant, Aurora," she said as she applied the dye. "Any special event?" "Let's just say I have some very important meetings," I replied. "I need to look impeccable." Carmen laughed. "You always look impeccable. You're one of those women who don't go unnoticed." While she was drying my hair, I checked my bank account from my phone's app. Thank God my husband and I were planners. We had a good pension, a lifetime of work savings, and the house was fully paid off. Melissa and Chris have always believed I'm a silly old woman who doesn't understand money, but they are completely mistaken. I took out my digital planner and checked my contacts. Mr. Hernandez, my trusted lawyer. I called him while Carmen was doing my nails. "Mr. Hernandez, this is Aurora Perez. I need to make some important changes to my will. Could you see me this afternoon?" "Of course, Mrs. Perez." "Is everything all right?" he asked with genuine concern. "Everything is perfect," I replied. "I just need to update a few things." "Does 4 in the afternoon work for you?" We confirmed the appointment. Rose arrived at the salon just as I was finishing. We had planned to go to the bank together and then to the lawyer. "You look beautiful," she said. "Ready to take on the world." We left together in my car towards the city center. At the bank, I asked to speak with the manager, Mr. Fernando has known me for years and always attends to me personally. "Mrs. Perez, how can I help you?" I explained that I wanted to review all my accounts, my investments, and make some changes. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "On the contrary," I said, "I want to make sure my money is exactly where I want it to be." We reviewed everything: the savings account, the certificates of deposit, the checking account. Everything was in order. Everything was solely in my name as it should be. "Mr. Fernando," I said before leaving, "if anyone comes asking about my accounts or trying to get information about my finances, even if they claim to be my family, do not give them any information. Only I can access my information." He nodded professionally. "Of course, Mrs. Perez. All your information is completely confidential." Rose and I went to lunch at our favorite restaurant before the appointment with the lawyer. "Are you sure about what you're going to do?" she asked as we shared some tacos. "Completely sure," I replied. "Melissa needs to learn that mothers have dignity too." I showed Rose the pictures I had on my phone from the previous Sunday. I had taken a few discreetly during lunch. Melissa glued to her phone while I cooked, Chris watching TV, while I set the table, Marina crying after being scolded. "These pictures remind me why I'm doing the right thing," I said. At Mr. Hernandez's office. I arrived promptly at 4. His secretary offered me coffee and showed me in immediately. The lawyer is a serious professional man who has always treated me with respect. "Mrs. Perez, tell me what you need." I explained the situation with Melissa and Chris, how they treated me, how they talked about my money as if it were already theirs, how they disrespected me to my face. The lawyer listened without interrupting, taking notes in his notebook. "I understand perfectly," he said when I finished. "Unfortunately, it's more common than people think. What changes do you want to make exactly?" I took out a sheet of paper where I had written down everything I wanted to change. I had been thinking about this all night. "I want to completely change the beneficiaries," I said with a firmness that surprised me. "Marina will still receive what's hers, but everything else will go to other people and organizations that truly value me." The lawyer reviewed my current will and began to take notes on the changes. "Are you completely sure about this decision, Mrs. Perez? It's a very drastic change." I told him I had never been more sure of anything in my life. We worked for 2 hours preparing the new will. Every word, every clause, every detail was exactly as I wanted it. When we finished, I felt a sense of liberation I hadn't experienced in years. "The document will be ready to sign on Wednesday," the lawyer told me. "You'll need witnesses." And I told him that Rose and my other friends would be happy to be witnesses. Perfect. "We'll see you on Wednesday at 10 in the morning." That night, I came home feeling like a new woman. I made a light dinner, put on my favorite pajamas, and sat in my living room to watch my 9 o'clock soap opera. My phone rang several times. It was Melissa. I didn't answer any of the calls. Before going to bed, I wrote in my personal journal, "Today my new life began." Today, I decided that Aurora Perez deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. Tomorrow, Melissa will start to understand that mothers know how to stand up for themselves, too. The next few days passed in a strange calm. Melissa called me 5 times on Monday, 7 on Tuesday, and I didn't answer any of them. Not because I was angry, but because I had finally understood something I should have understood years ago. I have no obligation to be available for someone who treats me badly, even if it's my own daughter. On Tuesday morning, while I was having my coffee and checking Facebook, I saw that Melissa had posted a family photo from the previous Sunday. The picture showed her Chris and Marina smiling in the dining room with the dishes I had prepared still on the table. The caption read, "Sunday with the family. Blessed with my perfect little family." She didn't even mention that I had been there, that I had cooked, that I had bought everything. It was as if I had been erased from history. Rose called me early. "Did you see Melissa's Facebook?" she asked. "I saw it," I replied. "Nothing surprises me anymore." Rose huffed on the other end of the line. "That girl has no shame. How could she post a picture of the food you made without even mentioning you?" "It's better this way," I said. "She's doing me the favor of showing everyone who she really is." We arranged to meet at the park as usual, but first I had to stop by the bank to sign some documents that Mr. Fernando had prepared for me. As I was getting dressed, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered, thinking it might be something important. "Mrs. Aurora." It was a young woman's voice. "This is Jessica Stevens' girlfriend, Chris's cousin. Could we talk for a moment?" This really surprised me. Why would my son-in-law's cousin's girlfriend be calling me? "Of course, go ahead," I replied. Jessica lowered her voice as if she were about to tell me a secret. "Ma'am, I don't know if you know, but Chris and Melissa have been talking to Stephen about getting a loan. They say you're going to give them the down payment for a business, but they need the money soon." My blood ran cold. "A loan for what?" Jessica hesitated for a moment. "To open a clothing store. Chris says you've already agreed, but the money is taking a while to come through because the banks are very slow with older people." Older people. As if being 70 made me an idiot. "Jessica," I said, with all the calm I could muster, "I have never talked to them about any business or any loan. How much money are they asking for?" The answer left me speechless. $200,000. Chris says that's nothing for you because you have a lot of money saved up. I thanked Jessica for telling me and asked her not to tell Chris or Melissa that we had spoken. I hung up the phone trembling with indignation. Not only had they disrespected me to my face, but they were using my name to get a loan, promising others that I would pay. I immediately called Mr. Hernandez. "Mr. Hernandez, I need to speed up the will. Could we sign it today instead of Wednesday?" His secretary told me it was possible that the document was ready. "Perfect. I'll be there in 2 hours." I called Rosemary and Anne. I explained the urgency, and they all agreed to accompany me as witnesses. "Those scoundrels aren't going to take advantage of you anymore," Mary said with that fire I love about her. "It's about time you put a stop to them." On the way to the lawyer's office, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Melissa had escalated from calls to WhatsApp messages. The first one said, "Mom, why aren't you answering me? Are you okay?" The second, "I'm worried. If you don't answer, I'm coming to your house." The third, "Mom, don't be proud. We all have bad days." Bad days. As if humiliating me in front of my granddaughter was just a bad day. As if treating me like a servant was just a bad moment. As if using my name to get loans was a harmless prank. In the office, Mr. Hernandez received me professionally. We reviewed the new will line by line. Marina was still a beneficiary of a significant portion because she wasn't to blame for anything. But everything else had completely changed. The house, which was what Melissa and Chris were most interested in, would now be donated to a foundation that helps elderly women who have been abandoned. The main savings would be divided among charitable organizations that truly make a difference in the community. A portion went to Rose, who had been more of a sister than a friend all these years. "Are you sure about all these changes, Mrs. Perez?" the lawyer asked me one last time. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied. "I want my money to go to people who will truly value it and use it for good." I signed each page with a tranquility that surprised me. Rose, Mary, and Anne signed as witnesses, and they all hugged me when we finished. "I admire you so much," Anne told me. "I wish more women had your courage." We left the office and went to celebrate with coffee and cake at the cafe next door. We were chatting and laughing when my phone rang again. This time it was a landline. I answered, and it was Chris's voice. "Aurora, good afternoon. Sorry to bother you, but Melissa is very worried because you're not answering her calls. Is everything all right?" His voice sounded syrupy fake as always. "Everything is perfect, Chris," I replied. "Do you need something specific?" "Well, yes. We wanted to tell you about a very good business opportunity, an investment that could benefit the whole family." There it was, the real reason for all the concern. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about my money. "What kind of business are we talking about?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. Chris got excited, thinking I had taken the bait. "A clothing store, Aurora. The location is perfect in a very commercial area. We just need the initial capital." "And how much would that initial capital be?" I feigned interest. $200,000, but it's a safe investment, Aurora. In 6 months, we'd already be seeing profits. Exactly the same amount Jessica had told me. "Chris," I said in a very sweet voice, "that investment sounds interesting. Why don't you come to my house tomorrow so you can show me the business plan? Bring all the papers, all the numbers. I want to see exactly how my money will be spent." Chris was so excited, his voice almost broke. "Of course, Aurora. What time works for you?" I told him 3 in the afternoon would be perfect. "Excellent. I'll tell Melissa. She's going to be so happy." I hung up the phone and my friends looked at me curiously. "Are you going to give them the money?" Rose asked. "Of course not," I replied. "But tomorrow they're going to get a surprise they'll never forget." That night I went home and prepared everything for the next day. I made copies of my new will, printed the WhatsApp conversation where Melissa had disrespected me, and prepared a folder with all the receipts from the previous Sundays. The groceries, the ingredients, everything I had spent from my own pocket to cook for them. I also got my digital recorder ready, the one I use to remember doctor's appointments. Tomorrow I was going to record the entire conversation. Because I knew that later Melissa and Chris would deny everything they would say, I was confused that I misunderstood things. Before going to bed, I wrote in my journal, "Tomorrow, Melissa and Chris will discover that their mother is not the silly old woman they thought. They will learn that actions have consequences. And they will understand that respect is not begged for, it is earned." I fell asleep peacefully, more peacefully than I had been in months. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. At 3 o'clock sharp, Melissa and Chris knocked on my door. I saw them arrive from my living room window. She was carrying a new-looking pink folder. He had a laptop under his arm. They came smiling, well-dressed, as if they were going to an important business meeting. How ironic. "Mom," Melissa gave me a kiss on the cheek, as if nothing had happened last Sunday. "You look great. Are you feeling better?" As if my problem had been the flu, and not the humiliation she put me through in front of my granddaughter. Chris hugged me with that fake familiarity that bothered me so much. "Aurora, thank you so much for having us. We're very excited to show you this opportunity." They sat in my living room as if they owned the place. Chris immediately opened his laptop. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked with my best hostess smile. Melissa nodded distractedly while she reviewed her papers. "Yes, Mom, thanks. But don't go to too much trouble, this won't take long." Don't go to too much trouble, as if serving them was a burden for me. I went to the kitchen and made coffee, taking the opportunity to discreetly activate my digital recorder. I put it on the tray with the cups hidden among the napkins. Every word they said would be recorded for posterity. I returned to the living room and served the coffee. Chris already had his presentation ready on the computer screen. "Look, Aurora, this is the location." He showed me photos of a commercial space that looked very nice. It's in a perfect area with a lot of foot traffic from young people, which is our target market. Melissa took some papers out of her pink folder. "Mom, here are all the numbers. The initial investment is $200,000, but look at the profit projections." She showed me some charts that looked like a child had made them with numbers they had clearly invented. "It looks interesting," I said, sipping my coffee slowly. "And why do you need me to invest? Can't you get a loan from the bank?" Chris and Melissa glanced at each other quickly. "Well, Aurora banks are very complicated. They ask for a lot of requirements and charge very high interest rates. Besides, Mom," Melissa added with that sweet voice she used when she wanted something, "we thought it would be nice for it to be a family business. You would be our partner, not just our investor." Partner? As if I would have any real control over the money. "And what guarantees do you offer?" I asked them. Chris got nervous. "Guarantees, well, Aurora, we're family." "Our word should be enough." Melissa nodded. "Mom, since when do you need guarantees from your own daughter?" Since that daughter screamed at me that I don't belong in her family, I thought, but I didn't say it. Instead, I continued with my questions. "Have you researched the competition? Do you know how many clothing stores are in that area?" Chris stammered something about his idea being different, but he had no real numbers. "And what if the business doesn't work?" I asked. "How will you return my investment?" Melissa became impatient. "Mom, why are you thinking so negatively? The business will be a huge success." They had no plan B. They had nothing but dreams and my money. I decided to change tactics. "Melissa, after what happened on Sunday, I'm surprised you're here asking me for money." Her face changed immediately. "Oh, Mom, I already said we all have bad days. Don't hold a grudge." A grudge, I looked at her intently. "Daughter, you screamed at me that I don't belong to the family. You kicked me out of your house, and now you come asking me for $200,000 as if nothing happened." Chris tried to intervene. "Aurora families always have arguments. The important thing is to move forward." Melissa sighed dramatically. "Fine, Mom, I apologize for Sunday. You know how I get when I'm stressed, but that has nothing to do with the business." A insincere apology just to get the money. "You know what?" I said, getting up from my chair. "Let me think about it. It's a lot of money and I need to be sure." Melissa turned pale. "Think about it, Mom. We've been working on this for weeks. The owner of the place needs an answer this week." Chris closed his laptop with barely concealed frustration. "Aurora, with all due respect, this opportunity won't last forever. If we don't take the space now, someone else will." Pressure. They always used pressure when they didn't get what they wanted immediately. "I understand," I said calmly, "but $200,000 isn't pocket change. I need to consult with my lawyer, review my finances, be completely sure." Melissa stood up abruptly. "Your lawyer? Why do you need a lawyer? We're your family." "Precisely because you are my family," I replied. "I want to do things right. If we're going to be partners, we need a legal contract that protects everyone." Chris stood up too. "Aurora, I think you're complicating something very simple." Melissa started gathering her papers with sharp movements. "Mom, sometimes I feel like you don't trust us. After everything we've done for you, and what had they done for me exactly? Treat me like a servant every Sunday." "What have you done for me exactly?" I asked with genuine curiosity. Melissa was silent. Chris stammered something about visits and company, but couldn't give any concrete examples, because there weren't any. "Fine," Melissa finally said. "Think about it, but don't take too long because, as Chris says, the opportunity won't last forever." They headed for the door with a coldness that completely contrasted with the warmth they had arrived with. "One more question," I said before they left. "Have you already told anyone that I'm going to invest in the business?" Chris immediately denied it. "No, Aurora. We've only talked among ourselves." Liar. "Perfect," I smiled. "Because it would be very awkward if you had promised my money before you had my answer." I walked them to the door and saw them off with the same fake smile they had used with me. When they left, I sat in my living room and turned off the recorder. I had the whole conversation recorded: their lies, their lack of planning, their emotional pressure, their shameless manipulation. But above all, I had confirmation that they only saw me as a walking bank. I called Rose immediately. "How did it go?" she asked. "Exactly as I expected," I replied. "Tomorrow I'm going to call them to give them my final answer, and it's going to be an answer they'll never forget." The next day, I woke up earlier than usual. I had decided that this Thursday would be the day that Aurora Perez took complete control of her life. I had a quiet breakfast, got dressed in my favorite navy blue suit, the one that makes me feel powerful, and left the house with a tranquility I hadn't felt in years. First, I went to the bank. Mr. Fernando received me in his private office as always. "Mrs. Perez, how can I help you today?" I explained that I needed to make some important changes to my accounts. I want to change all my passwords, update my beneficiaries, and set up new security measures. Mr. Fernando took notes as I spoke. "Any specific problem, ma'am?" I told him about Jessica's call and how Melissa and Chris were using my name to get loans. "I want to make sure no one can access my information or use my name without my express permission." "Of course," he said professionally. "We'll change all your access codes and put a special alert on your account. If anyone mentions your name for any financial transaction, they will call us immediately to confirm with you." "Perfect." I also took the opportunity to withdraw a considerable amount of cash, not because I was going to spend it, but because I wanted to have it available for what I had planned. Mr. Fernando processed everything without asking unnecessary questions. "Do you need any special documentation?" he asked. "Just the updated bank statements," I replied. After the bank, I went to Mr. Hernandez's office to pick up the certified copies of my new will. His secretary handed them to me in a sealed manila envelope. "The lawyer wants you to know that everything is perfectly in order," she said. "Your previous will has been officially revoked." My next stop was Rose's house. I needed my best friend to be present for what I was about to do. I found her watering her plants in the garden. "Ready for the show?" she asked with a mischievous smile. "Ready," I replied. "Can you come with me to my house? I'm going to call Melissa." Rose immediately took off her gardening gloves. "I wouldn't miss this for the world," she said. "I've been waiting for years for you to put a stop to those bullies." We left in my car for my house, talking about everything that had happened in the last few days. At my house, I set everything up as if it were a serious business meeting. I set the dining room table with the tablecloth, took out my best coffee set, and arranged all the documents I had prepared, copies of the new will receipts for all the Sunday expenses, the transcript of the previous day's recording. "Are you nervous?" Rose asked as we arranged the chairs. "Not at all," I replied. "On the contrary, I feel free. For the first time in years, I'm going to say exactly what I think, without fear of the consequences." Rose hugged me. "I admire you so much, friend." I dialed Melissa's number at 2 p.m. She answered on the second ring. "Mom, have you thought about the business?" Her voice sounded anxious, hopeful. "Yes, dear, I've made my decision." "Can you and Chris come to the house? I have a few things to tell you." "Of course," Melissa said excitedly. "How about in an hour?" I told her that was perfect, that I'd be waiting for them at 3. "Mom, can I ask what your decision was?" I pretended the line was cutting out. "Hello, Mom." I hung up the phone smiling. Rose and I sat down to wait. "What do you think they'll say?" she asked. "They're going to be furious," I replied. "They'll say I'm crazy, that I'm being manipulated, that I don't know what I'm doing. But for the first time, I won't care what they think." They arrived at 3 o'clock sharp. This time they were more relaxed. Melissa even brought a bottle of champagne. "To celebrate our partnership," she said when I opened the door. Chris was carrying flowers. "For the best mother-in-law in the world," he said with that fake smile I knew so well. "Please come in," I said formally. "I was expecting you." Rose was sitting in the living room, and Melissa was surprised to see her. "Hello, Rose." "I didn't know you were visiting." Rose smiled. "Aurora asked me to be present." "As a witness." Chris became slightly nervous. "Witness to what?" I invited them to sit in the dining room where I had everything prepared. A witness to our conversation, I explained, about how you're going to handle my money. I want everything to be very clear from the beginning. Melissa and Chris sat across from me, the bottle of champagne and the flowers still in their hands. "Well, Mom," Melissa said, rubbing her hands together, "what's your decision?" I looked her directly in the eye. "My decision is no." The silence that followed was deafening. Melissa blinked several times as if she hadn't understood. "No what?" she finally asked. "I'm not going to invest in your business," I said clearly. "I'm not going to give you the $200,000. Chris leaned forward. "Aurora, may I ask why?" His voice was still controlled, but it no longer sounded friendly. "Of course," I replied. "There are several reasons." I took out the transcript of the previous day's recording. "First, you lied to me yesterday. Chris told me you hadn't spoken to anyone about my investment, but I know you've already promised my money to get a $200,000 loan." Both of their faces turned pale. "Second," I continued, pulling out the receipts. "For 2 years I have spent my own money every Sunday to cook for you, buy you food, and you've treated me like your servant. Here are all the receipts. It's more than $20,000 out of my own pocket." Melissa tried to interrupt. "Mom, we never asked you to." I raised my hand to silence her. "Third," I took out the photos I had discreetly taken on previous Sundays. "These photos clearly show how you treat me in your house. Chris watching TV while I cook you on the phone while I clean Marina crying because you yell at her. And fourth," I took out the manila envelope with my new will. "Last Sunday you told me I don't belong to your family. You screamed at me to get out. Well, daughter, I took your advice very seriously." I opened the envelope and placed the copies of the will on the table. "This is my new will signed yesterday before a notary. Marina is still a beneficiary of a portion because she's not to blame for anything. But everything else, including this house, will go to charitable organizations and people who truly value me." Melissa stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. "You can't do that. That's my inheritance." "I'm your only daughter." Chris was paralyzed, staring at the papers as if they were a death sentence. "Your inheritance," I said, standing up too, "was the love and respect I had for you. But you decided to throw it in the trash last Sunday. Actions have consequences, Melissa." "You're crazy," she yelled. "Rose is putting ideas in your head." "The neighbors are going to think you've lost your mind." Rose stood up. "Aurora is more sane than ever, girl. What she lost was the patience to put up with your disrespect." Chris finally reacted. "Aurora, this is crazy. You can't make such important decisions out of anger." Anger. As if 2 years of humiliation were just a passing fit of anger. "You know what?" I said, walking towards the door. "You're right about one thing. I don't belong to your family anymore. Because a real family doesn't treat their elders like this. A real family doesn't see their parents as ATMs." Melissa followed me to the door, crying with rage. "You're going to die alone. No one will take care of you. You're going to regret this." I turned one last time. "Daughter, I'd rather die alone with dignity than live surrounded by people who only want me for my money." I opened the door wide. "Now please leave my house, and don't come back until you learn to treat your mother with respect." They left in a fury, Chris muttering insults he preferred I didn't hear clearly. When they were gone, Rose and I stood in silence for a moment. Then she started to applaud. "Bravo, Aurora. That was masterful." We hugged, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. The next day was Friday, the day of my appointment at the beauty salon with Mrs. Carmen. I arrived early because I wanted to look impeccable for what I had planned. Carmen noticed immediately that something had changed in me. "You look radiant, Aurora. Did something good happen?" I smiled at her as she applied the hair color. "Let's just say I finally put things in their place." While she was drying my hair, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Melissa had started a campaign of calls since 7 in the morning. I also had messages from unknown numbers, probably distant relatives she had contacted to pressure me. I didn't answer any of them. "Mrs. Aurora," Carmen said as she was doing my nails, My sister lives in the same neighborhood as your daughter. She says there was a lot of shouting yesterday. Is everything all right? I briefly explained what had happened. Carmen nodded in understanding. These young people today don't respect their elders. You did the right thing. After the salon, I went to the shopping mall where Rose works in a clothing store. It was Friday afternoon, and it was crowded. Rose saw me arrive and waved from a distance. How are you feeling after yesterday? She asked when I approached her counter. Better than ever, I replied. Have you talked to Mary and Anne? Rose nodded. I told them everything. They're proud of you. Mary says she wishes she had your courage to stand up to her daughter-in-law. We laughed. Family problems were more common than people admitted. We were chatting when I saw a familiar person entering the store. It was Jessica Chris's cousin's girlfriend, the one who had warned me about the loan. She approached timidly. Mrs. Aurora, could we talk for a moment? Rose discreetly stepped aside. Of course, Jessica. What do you need? The girl looked nervous. Ma'am, Stephen told me that Chris called him yesterday very upset. He said you had gone crazy and were canceling everything because of your friend's influence. My blood ran cold. The smear campaign had already begun. What else did he tell you? I asked. Jessica lowered her voice. That you're not in your right mind anymore. That they're going to have to get legal help to protect you from your friends who are manipulating you. The shameless man was already planning to have me declared incompetent. I thanked Jessica for the information and asked her to let me know if she heard anything else. Of course, ma'am. It seems to me that you're perfectly sane. In fact, I think this is the first time I've seen you so sure of yourself. Rose and I left the mall and went straight to find Mr. Hernandez. His secretary told us he was in a hearing, but that it was urgent. In half an hour, he came out of his office. Mrs. Perez, what happened? I told him about Chris's threat to have me declared incompetent. The lawyer immediately became serious. That's very serious, ma'am. We need to act quickly. He explained that Chris and Melissa could try to get an interdict, a legal declaration that I am not competent to manage my own affairs. What do we need to do? I asked. First, we're going to get medical evaluations that certify you are perfectly sound of mind. Second, we're going to officially register your new will today. And third, we're going to prepare a preemptive lawsuit. We left the lawyer's office and went straight to the private hospital where I have my health insurance. Dr. Ramirez, my primary care physician for the last 10 years, saw me immediately when I explained the urgency. Aurora, you are perfectly lucid. You have always been one of my most intelligent and organized patients. He gave me several cognitive tests, memory tests, basic psychological evaluations. Everything came back perfect. I'm going to give you a complete medical certificate, he said. Any judge who sees these results will confirm that you are in full command of your mental faculties. On Saturday morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. Go out for breakfast alone at my favorite restaurant. I was enjoying my chilaquiles when I saw someone I didn't expect come in, my dear friend, Antonia Chavez, Melissa's godmother. Antonia saw me and came directly to my table. Aurora, what a surprise to see you here. She sat down without an invitation. Melissa called me yesterday very worried. She told me what happened. Here came the first organized attack. What exactly did she tell you? I asked with genuine curiosity. Antonia sighed dramatically. That you had an argument and that you overreacted, that you changed your will out of spite, and that your friends are filling your head with ideas. And what do you think? I asked, sipping my coffee calmly. Antonia leaned forward. Aurora, I've known you for 30 years. You're an intelligent woman, but at our age we sometimes make emotional decisions that we later regret. Antonia, I said, looking at her intently, did you know that Melissa screamed at me that I don't belong in her family? Did you know they treat me like a servant every Sunday? Did you know they use my name to get loans without my permission? Her expression changed. No, she admitted. Melissa didn't tell me those details. I explained everything that had really happened without leaving anything out. When I finished, Antonia was silent for a long moment. I didn't know things were that bad, she finally said. You know what's the saddest part? I asked. That Melissa is more worried about the money she lost than the mother she hurt. She hasn't once offered a sincere apology. She just wants everything to go back to the way it was. Antonia finished her coffee and stood up. Aurora, I'm going to talk to Melissa. This can't go on.
아마니 주인이었사옵니다.
I watched her walk away and knew that at least one person had understood my point of view. On Sunday, I decided not to stay home waiting for the call I knew would come. Instead, Rosemary and I went for a walk in the park and then to lunch at a new restaurant. We were ordering our food when my phone rang. It was Melissa. "Mom, we need to talk," she said in a voice that was trying to sound controlled. "I'm at your house. Where are you?" I told her I was having lunch with my friends. "Can you come? It's important." I told her she could wait for me or come back another day. "Mom, please, I'm here with Marina. She wants to see you." There it was, using my granddaughter as an emotional weapon. "Melissa," I said, "Marina is always welcome in my house, but if you're coming to continue disrespecting me, you'd better go back." There was a long pause. "I'm not here to fight," she finally said. "I'm here to talk like adults." I told her I would be home in an hour. I finished my lunch peacefully with my friends, knowing that this time it would be Melissa who would have to wait. When I got to my house, I found them sitting on the porch. Marina ran to hug me as always. "Grandma, I missed you so much." Melissa remained seated with a face I couldn't tell if it was regret or strategy. "Come in," I said. This time it would be on my terms in my house with my rules. The final confrontation was about to begin. Marina clung to my hand as we entered the house. "Grandma, Mom says you're mad at us." "It's true." My heart broke seeing her worried little face. "I'm not mad at you, my love. I could never be mad at you." I looked her directly in the eye. "I'm just sad because adults sometimes behave badly." Melissa sat on the sofa with her hands clasped, a posture I hadn't seen on her since she was a teenager. "Mom, I came because we need to fix this." Her voice sounded different, less aggressive than last Friday. "Marina doesn't understand why you don't come on Sundays anymore." "Marina," I said to my granddaughter as I sat her next to me, "did your mom explain what happened last Sunday?" The little girl nodded sadly. "She said you had a big fight, that she yelled at you and you left angry." Melissa had completely changed the story. I looked at Melissa in disbelief. "You told her I yelled at you." Melissa turned red. "Mom, now is not the time to argue about details in front of Marina." Exactly the same tactic as always, using the child to avoid facing the truth. "Marina," I said softly, "go to the kitchen and get yourself a glass of milk. There's gelatin I bought for you in the fridge." When Marina left, I turned to Melissa. "You really told her I yelled at you. You didn't tell her you kicked me out of your house screaming that I don't belong to the family." Melissa averted her gaze. "Mom, I was very stressed that day. I wasn't thinking about what I said." Finally, an admission of guilt, albeit a small one. Chris was having problems at work. Marina was being very difficult, and you came in with that attitude of always criticizing everything. "What attitude?" I asked. "Defending Marina when you scolded her for spilling juice, that was my big offense." Melissa sighed. "It wasn't just that, Mom. It's that you always make me feel like I don't know how to take care of my own daughter." Marina came back with her glass of milk and sat between us. "Are you two friends again?" she asked with the innocent hope of children. Melissa and I looked at each other. "We're talking, my love," I said. "Mom," Melissa continued after a moment, "I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you, but changing your entire will is too drastic." There it was. She didn't care that she had hurt me. She cared about the money she was going to lose. "Melissa," I said with all the calm I could muster, "the will is just the consequence. The real problem is how you treat me, how you see me, how you only need me when you want something." Marina looked at us without fully understanding, but feeling the tension. Melissa leaned forward. "Okay, I admit I've been inconsiderate, but Mom, we're family. Families forgive each other." She used the magic word forgiveness, but without any real change in behavior. "Do you remember," I said, "when your father died and I was left all alone?" Melissa nodded. "You promised you would never leave me, that we would always be together." Her face softened a little. "And I kept my promise, Mom. I've always been there." "Been there?" I looked at her incredulously. "Melissa, in 2 years, you haven't visited me once without asking for something. You haven't come to ask how I am to keep me company to talk with me. You only come when you need money or when you want me to watch Marina." Marina raised her head. "Is that true, Mom?" Melissa got nervous. "Marina, adult things are complicated." The girl looked at me. "Grandma, is that why you don't come on Sundays anymore? Because Mom doesn't visit you?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Rose. "Aurora, I'm calling because Chris just stopped by the store asking for you. He told my boss you're sick and the family is worried." Melissa turned pale when she heard Chris's name. "What did you say?" I asked. "That I saw you yesterday, perfectly fine and very happy," Rose replied. "But be careful, friend. That man is spreading strange rumors about you." I hung up and looked at Melissa intently. "Where is Chris right now?" I asked. Melissa hesitated. He's at his cousin's lawyer's office." My blood ran cold. "What lawyer?" Melissa didn't want to answer. "Melissa, what lawyer?" "The one who's going to help us prove you're not well," she finally confessed. "Mom, everyone is worried about you. You changed your will overnight. You don't answer the phone." "You're acting different." Marina got scared. "Grandma is sick," Melissa reassured her. "No, sweetie, she's just confused." Confused? That was going to be their strategy, to paint me as a senile old woman manipulated by my friends. I got up and went to my bedroom. I came back with the folder where I had all my medical documents, the evaluations Dr. Ramirez had done, the certificates of mental capacity. I put them in front of Melissa. "This is what your husband is going to find when he tries to have me declared incompetent," I said. "Complete medical exams, psychological evaluations, certificates from 3 different doctors confirming that I am in full command of my mental faculties." Melissa looked at the papers with wide eyes. "When did you do all this?" I explained how Jessica had warned me about their plans. "Melissa, you left me no other choice. If you can't respect my decisions, you're going to have to respect them by law." My phone rang again. This time it was Mr. Hernandez. "Mrs. Perez, a lawyer just called me asking about your mental faculties. I told him that you are legally represented and that any communication must be with me." I thanked him and hung up. "Did you hear that?" I said to Melissa. "Your husband is already pulling strings to take away my rights. This is how he shows me he loves me." Melissa stood up agitated. "Mom, we just want to protect you." "Protect me from what?" I yelled for the first time. "From making my own decisions, from choosing how to spend my money, from deciding who deserves my respect." Marina started to cry when she saw me upset. I immediately calmed down and hugged Marina. "I'm sorry, my love. Adults sometimes get upset." The girl hugged me tightly. "Grandma, I don't want you to be sad." My heart broke. This child didn't deserve to be in the middle of all this. "Melissa," I said with a firmness that surprised me, "you have 2 choices. Either you tell Chris to immediately stop his legal plans, and you give me a sincere apology for everything that has happened, or this will be the last time you see your daughter in this house." Melissa froze. "You're forbidding me from bringing Marina." I explained that Marina would always be welcome, but that I would not allow them to continue using my granddaughter as a tool for manipulation. "Think about it carefully," I said, walking towards the door, "because this time there's no going back. Either you respect me as your mother, or you leave me alone forever." I opened the door. "Now go. I have important things to do." Melissa left with Marina in her arms, the little girl crying and asking why she couldn't stay longer with her grandma. When they were gone, I sat in my living room, and for the first time in days, I cried. Not out of sadness, but out of relief. I had put all my cards on the table. On Monday morning, I woke up with a strange tranquility. It wasn't the calm of someone who has won a battle, but the peace of someone who has finally taken control of their own life. As I was having breakfast, my phone rang. It was Mr. Hernandez. "Mrs. Perez, I have important news," he said. "Your son-in-law's lawyer has officially withdrawn any legal proceedings against you. Apparently, when we showed him your medical evaluations and explained that you have full legal representation, he decided it wasn't worth pursuing." I was relieved but not surprised. Chris was a coward who only attacked when he thought he had the upper hand. Does that mean they can't do anything anymore? I asked. Exactly. Your documents are in perfect order. Your mental capacity is medically certified, and your will is completely valid. After breakfast, I went to the park for my morning walk. Rosemary and Anne were already waiting for me. How are you feeling after yesterday? Rose asked. Free? I replied. Completely free. Mary walked beside me. My daughter saw Melissa at the supermarket yesterday. She said she looked terrible, like she hadn't slept. I didn't feel joy hearing that, but I didn't feel pity either. Decisions have consequences, I said simply. During our walk, I told them about the lawyer's call. Anne applauded. It's about time those bullies learned they can't manipulate everyone. Mary added, Aurora, you're an example for all of us. Many women our age need your courage. After the walk, I went to the bank to take care of some pending matters. Mr. Fernando greeted me with his usual professional smile. Mrs. Perez, is everything all right with the security measures we implemented? I confirmed that everything was perfect. Has anyone else asked about my accounts? Funnily enough, yes, he said. A young man who said he was your son-in-law came in on Friday asking about your recent transactions. Of course, we didn't give him any information. Chris had been very busy trying to control my life from every possible angle. Mr. Fernando, I said, I want to make a significant donation. I explained that I wanted to donate $50,000 to the St. Joseph's Home for the Elderly, where many women like me lived abandoned by their families. That's an excellent cause, he said. Do you want your name to appear on the donation? Of course, I replied. I want it to be very clear that Aurora Perez chose to help people who really need it. The transaction was completed immediately. They gave me a certificate of the donation, which I kept carefully. In the afternoon, while I was organizing my important papers, the doorbell rang. It was Marina alone. My heart skipped a beat. What are you doing here, my love? Where's your mom? Marina looked sad. She's in the car. She told me to come and ask if we could talk. I went out to the porch and saw Melissa in her car parked on the street. She looked exactly as Mary had described, terrible with dark circles under her eyes, as if she hadn't slept well for days. She didn't get out of the car, just looked at me from a distance. Marina, I said, kneeling to be at her level, did your mom send you to talk to me? The girl nodded. She told me to tell you that she won't bother you anymore, that she just wants things to go back to the way they were. The way they were. That was exactly the mentality that had caused this whole problem. Melissa wanted everything to go back to normal without changing her behavior at all. Marina, I said, taking her little hands, go and tell your mom that if she wants to talk to me, she has to get out of the car and come here herself, that I'm not a child she can send messages to. Marina ran back to the car. After a few minutes, Melissa slowly got out and walked towards my house. She looked defeated, vulnerable, very different from the aggressive woman of the previous Sunday. Mom, she said when she reached the porch, can we talk? Of course, I replied, but Marina stays inside watching TV. This conversation is between adults. I took Marina to the living room, put on her favorite cartoons, and returned to the porch where Melissa was waiting standing. Sit down, I said, pointing to one of the chairs. Melissa sat in silence, looking at her hands. Mom, she finally began, Chris told me they couldn't do anything legal against you. Her voice sounded defeated. Were you hoping they could? I asked directly. Melissa shook her head. I don't know what I was hoping. Everything got out of control so fast. She was quiet for a moment. Is it true you donated money to the nursing home? $50,000, I confirmed. Money that was once going to be part of your inheritance. Melissa turned pale. Why, Mom? Why would you rather give it to strangers than your own family? Because those strangers treat me with more respect than I've received in my own house, I replied without hesitation. Because when I go to visit them, they see me as a person, not a walking bank. Melissa started crying silently. Mom, I know I was wrong. I know I treated you badly. But are you really going to throw away 35 years of being a mother and daughter over one fight? One fight. She was still downplaying everything that had happened. Melissa, I said, leaning forward, This isn't about one fight. This is about 2 years of disrespect, of treating me like a servant, of using my name to get money, of planning to have me declared mentally incompetent when I didn't yield to your blackmail. What do you want me to do? She asked through her tears. What do you need to forgive me? For the first time in a long time, she sounded sincere. I want you to respect me, I said simply. To treat me like your mother, not your employee. I want you to acknowledge that I have the right to make my own decisions about my money, my time, and my life. I continued. I want you to understand that you're not entitled to my inheritance just because you're my daughter. An inheritance is earned with love and respect. Melissa wiped her tears. And if I really change my attitude, would you consider changing the will back? I looked at her for a long time. Wills can be changed, Melissa. But trust once broken is very hard to repair. I'm willing to try, she said, but I need you to give me a chance. I stood up from my chair. Melissa, chances aren't asked for. They're earned. With actions, not words. Marina ran out of the house. Are you friends again? She asked, hugging me. Melissa and I looked at each other. We're trying to work things out. I told my granddaughter, but it's going to take time. Marina, Melissa said, say goodbye to Grandma. We have to go. Marina hugged me tightly. I love you, Grandma. Are you coming next Sunday? I looked at Melissa before answering. We'll see, my love. When they left, I stood on the porch watching the car drive away. Melissa had sounded sincere, but words were easy. Real change required time and consistent action. That night before going to bed, I wrote in my journal, today Melissa came to ask for forgiveness. For the first time, she sounded sincere. But I am no longer the same woman who forgave everything without demanding real change. If she wants her mother back, she's going to have to earn it. I closed the journal, feeling like I had definitively closed a chapter of my life. What came next depended entirely on Melissa's decisions. But for the first time in years, those decisions weren't going to affect my inner peace. 3 months later, my life had completely changed. I woke up that October Wednesday with the feeling of freedom that had become my new normal. I got dressed in my favorite yellow blouse, the one Melissa always criticized, saying it was too youthful for my age. Today there was no one to comment on my clothes. I had a quiet breakfast while checking messages from my walking club's WhatsApp group. Rose had posted a picture of the flowers in her garden. Mary shared a new recipe. Anne sent a funny meme about modern grandmothers. I wrote, "Good morning, beauties, ready to conquer the park." During these months, I had established a routine that filled me with satisfaction. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, a walk with the girls. Tuesdays, computer classes at the community center. Thursdays, volunteer work at the St. Joseph's Home for the Elderly. Saturdays, the beauty salon and shopping. Sundays, time for myself. Sundays had become my favorite days. Instead of cooking for people who didn't value me, I now prepared my favorite meal just for myself. I watched my soap operas, read my books called Old Friends I Had Lost Touch With. It was amazing how much time I had reclaimed to live my own life. At the park, Rose was waiting for me with a special smile. "Aurora, I have news," she said as we began our walk. "What's up?" I asked. "I saw Melissa at the mall yesterday. She came up to me and asked how you were." "And what did you tell her?" Rose laughed. "I told her the truth, that I had never seen you so happy and full of life." During these 3 months, Melissa had tried to contact me several times. At first, it was desperate calls, then calmer WhatsApp messages, and finally silence. Mary joined our conversation. "Are you still not talking?" I nodded. "Melissa has to understand that relationships are built on mutual respect, not manipulation." Anne added, "Many of us have spent years putting up with disrespect for fear of being alone. You've taught us that being alone with dignity is better than being in company without respect." After the walk, I went to the nursing home where I now volunteer twice a week. Mrs. Carmen, the director, greeted me with her usual warmth. "Aurora, the ladies are already waiting for you. They're excited about today's class." I had started teaching basic technology classes to the residents. I taught them how to use WhatsApp to talk to their families, how to make video calls, how to browse Facebook. Mrs. Aurora, said Mrs. Esperanza, an 80-year-old woman, my grandchildren couldn't believe I sent them a message with emojis. Seeing the joy on their faces when they managed to connect with their loved ones filled my heart in a way I hadn't experienced in years. You've changed our lives, said Mrs. Refugio, before we felt completely disconnected from the world. During the class, my phone vibrated with a message. It was from an unknown number. Grandma Aurora, it's Marina. Mom let me use her phone to text you. I miss you so much. Can I come see you? My heart sped up. Marina had learned how to text. I replied immediately. Of course you can come, my love. When do you want to meet? The reply came quickly. Mom says whenever you want, that she'll bring me and pick me up whenever you say. That afternoon when I got home, I found something unexpected at my door, a manila envelope with my name handwritten on it. I opened it curiously. Inside was a letter from Melissa. Mom, it began. It's been 3 months, and every day I understand more the harm I caused you. The letter continued. I've been going to therapy. My doctor helped me understand that I took your love for granted as if it were a right and not a gift. I continued reading attentively. I'm not writing to ask you to come back. I'm writing to tell you that you were right about everything. Chris and I are getting a divorce, she confessed in the letter. I realized he only wanted me for your money, and I only wanted you for what you could do for us. Neither relationship was real love. This truly surprised me. The letter ended. Marina misses you every day. If you'll let me bring her to you, I promise it will be with no strings attached, not for you to come back to me, but because a little girl deserves to have her grandmother. And a grandmother like you deserves to be loved without self-interest. I sat in my living room to process what I had read. Melissa sounded different in that letter, more mature, more aware of her mistakes. But I had already learned not to trust words alone. I called Rose to tell her about the letter. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to see Marina, I replied, but it will be here in my house on my terms. Rose agreed. That child is not to blame for anything. I texted Melissa. You can bring Marina on Saturday at 2. You come, you drop her off, and you come back for her at 5. The reply came immediately. Perfect, Mom. Thank you. On Saturday, they arrived on time. Melissa looked different, thinner with dark circles under her eyes, but also calmer. Hi, Mom, she said without trying to hug me. Thanks for letting me bring Marina. Her attitude was respectful, almost shy. Marina ran to hug me as always. Grandma, I missed you so much. I picked her up and hugged her tightly. I missed you too, my love. Melissa watched us with a sad smile. I'll be back at 5, she said. If you need anything, just text me. Marina and I had a wonderful afternoon. We cooked together, played games, watched movies. Grandma, she said while we were making cookies, why don't Mom and Dad live together anymore? I explained in words she could understand that sometimes adults need to make difficult decisions to be happier. Are you happier now? She asked with the brutal honesty of children. Yes, my love, I replied. I'm much happier. Marina smiled. I can tell. You look prettier when you smile for real. At 5 o'clock sharp, Melissa returned for Marina. Was she good? She asked. As always, I replied. Marina said goodbye with kisses and hugs. Can I come next Saturday? I told her yes. When they left, I stood on my porch watching the sunset. My phone buzzed with a message from Rose. How did it go? I replied. Perfect. Marina is still the love of my life. That night before going to bed, I wrote in my journal. Today, I confirmed something I already knew. I can love Marina without having to tolerate disrespect from Melissa. I can be a grandmother without being a victim. I fell asleep thinking about everything that had changed in these months. I had regained my dignity, my independence, my joy for life. I had learned that true love is not begged for or blackmailed. It is given freely or not at all. Finally, after many years, I was the one who decided who to take care of. I was the one who chose how to spend my time, my energy, and my love. I was the one in control of my own life, and for the first time in a long time, that made me completely happy.